let's try and do that for real. And then the real challenges came, which was obviously in the actual end of arm tooling, the actual vacuum cup that we were using to pick up the product, the technology. Do we actually have high flow, low vacuum, or high vacuum, low flow? All these kind of things, and finding a match for the actual application was quite difficult.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the MTD podcast. Today we're broadcasting this or recording this from FANUC UK's headquarters in Coventry on Anstey Park. The subject today it's really about automation, really clever technology from a pair of companies that have developed an incredible solution for the recycling and the waste industry. Now, the two gentlemen joining me on today's podcast, I have one from FANUC, which is Oliver Selby from FANUC UK, who's the Business Development Manager. Oliver, welcome to the MTD podcast.
Yeah, hi Paul, thank you.
Not the first time for you, is it? I think
No,
you've done these
second
before.
one I think I've done. Yeah.
It will be less painful second time round.
Hopefully.
The other gentleman that's with us is the CEO from Recycleye, and that's Victor Dewulf. Victor, welcome to the MTD podcast.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having us.
Now, for those that sort of follow what we do, if they'd have watched the FANUC Open House live streams last year, or in fact come here to their event, they would have definitely seen the Recycleye product. An incredible piece of technology. It really was awe-inspiring to see the partnership between FANUC and Recycleye. And I think probably for the purpose of this podcast, Victor, we'll start with you. Could you maybe just describe, for those that don't know, what the Recycleye is and what it does?
Absolutely. At its core, it's a vision system that replicates the human eye and is used in waste sorting. So it's able to detect loads of different materials, from your coffee cups to water bottles to glass to paper, aluminium cans. And then combined with the robot arm, is able to sort out those recyclables that you and I throw in our recycling bin every day.
And how much attraction was it getting at the event last year? Because it was really popular, wasn't it? People were just looking at it thinking, wow, you know, this is just next generation stuff.
Yeah, plenty. I think it is. Well, even when we bring clients to site visits, it's quite mesmerizing. You can see them stand there and just look at all the pieces, and you could almost leave them for an hour looking at the robot picking out materials. Because it almost looks natural, because every pick is different and from different angles and different materials. It's almost replicating the human hand that would be picking those materials otherwise.
Okay, now every product has normally a collaboration and a partnership to make it a success. And of course, FANUC have been involved in this. They're the heartbeat of this product. Would that be a fair statement?
That'd be a very fair statement, yes.
Okay, and a good time to bring you in then, Oliver. So what we know what it does, but tell us about how you came to actually develop this with Recycleye, and what is your involvement, and also FANUC as a product.
Yeah, sure. So Recycleye approached us kind of almost at the start of the first lockdown, I think it was, right at the start of the pandemic, requiring sort of some information, support, to help their products develop and to enable us to actually bring together a collaboration that allowed them to de-risk the product when it was taken to market.
And what was your first thought though when you saw it? What did you think about it?
Certainly, the first thing that was kind of presented to us was the actual vision system and the functionality that was already existing from the work that Victor had done with his partner at university. That was really the guts of it, as Victor has mentioned. It was very, very good. The algorithm behind it was very, very powerful. He'd already got on board some very, very powerful partners in Microsoft and NVIDIA, who were kind of recognised names within the industry for bringing together great partnerships, first of all, but also with a great product behind them. We were excited to work alongside those as well, bring our technology, the robotic arm, and the way we can integrate those robotic arms with that vision system to the market, you know. One
of the best projects you've been involved in?
Certainly one of the most fulfilling, and something that you can say you had a hand in that, and we can say hopefully 10, 15 years down the line to our kids, every waste sorting facility in the UK has got something you've had a hand in. That's pretty exciting, you know.
So it wasn't a waste of time, excuse the pun.
Oh dear.
Victor, I want to know about your journey. I mean, Ollie mentions university. Where did this all start? Tell us about you and the development of this business.
So it came out of university by myself and my co-founder, Peter. We essentially both, I studied environmental engineering and he did computer vision. During my course in environmental engineering, I wasn't a fan of a lot of the subjects I was studying, but I was absolutely amazed by the work him and his friends were doing driverless cars, facial recognition. And so I guess I just wanted to be one of the cool kids. And so when it came time for me to develop a thesis, something I'd have 4 months on doing at least a prototype on, I applied computer vision to waste management. And that was a very rough prototype and then moved into a PhD. But then very quickly, with a lot of commercial traction behind it, we both moved to Peter's garage where we went on eBay, bought a 40-pound conveyor belt. That was our first, it was a treadmill that became our first industrial conveyor belt. And then we managed to raise some funds, but obviously just the two of us were only going to go so far and at a certain speed. So we decided to double down on what we were really good at, which was the vision system. And for the robot, instead find the best possible partner. And we reached out to many different people in the industry, and the obvious one that sort of came back and who we felt there was a really good relationship was FANUC. And so we started that project around 18 months ago. I think FANUC definitely took a leap of faith in us. At the time, I think we were only 5 people. We're now 30 people. And they've really allowed us to build a superior product in a shorter time frame and much better quality than we otherwise could have.
A lot of products in industry and in the marketplace evolve from looking at an existing solution and making it better. Is that what you've done, or is yours completely the first style of automation waste disposal that there is?
So we're not the first. There were a few in the industry already, but they had very low adoption rates because they had many problems, of which some was just really difficult to install. There were those enormous machines that required companies to change their conveyor belts, bust open their roofs to crane in units. They also had loads of problems with the grippers and the ability to grab items. And they also had very low maintenance networks, where obviously any downtime in those facilities is very costly. It was some other sort of small startups, which also meant they didn't quite meet the requirements of clients in the waste industry.
So as an entrepreneur then, tell us about the difficult bits that you've been and had to tackle and challenge in those early stages.
I think perhaps the most challenging one is to convince your first client. As soon as you have your first client and you can bring other clients to see how it works, it makes your task a lot easier. But FANUC obviously brought a lot of credibility with that, where we could tell the first client and really show them a very de-risked roadmap, having proven out the vision system already, and then leveraging the FANUC name to prove that the robots are reliable. It's not something we've put together in a garage between 5 guys, but really something that's been proven and tested in hundreds of thousands of installations. That was definitely a big part of the first unit.
We're going to talk about the AI in a minute as well, and the challenges that you faced, Oliver, with this. But before I go on, I just wanted to mention that if you're beginning to try and visualise what this product does and you haven't seen it, you can go onto the MTDCNC YouTube channel. If you search up the FANUC Open House from November 2021, there is a few videos on there, certainly where we interviewed both Victor and Oliver about the machine or the system, and you can see it in action there. So, Oliver, from your perspective, you said it was really fulfilling. What were the challenges that you faced, and what were the things that you overcome that maybe at some point you thought, "Oh God, how are we going to achieve this?"
Yeah, I mean, some of the biggest challenges were around sort of finding a solution where there's kind of the number of picks per minute that we were trying to achieve was kind of put to us and say, well, how many can you actually achieve? So we did a lot of simulation to try different methods. It got to a point where actually the simulated throughput was at a level which Victor said, okay, let's try and do that for real. And then the real challenges came, which was obviously in the actual end of arm tooling, the actual vacuum cup that we were using to pick up the product, the technology. Do we actually have high flow, low vacuum, or high vacuum, low flow? All these kind of things, and finding a match for the actual application was quite difficult. Now, sort of beyond that, Recycleye have taken that initial kind of understanding and what we actually installed in those first installations and developed it even further. Having the confidence for sort of to do that has come from working with FANUC and having that expertise at hand to kind of bounce ideas off. You know, this doesn't come lightly. It's from years and years of experience within fields such as the construction industry, for example, picking up bricks, blocks, different materials within manufacturing sites. We're now applying that same level of understanding and knowledge into waste picking. You know, it's an interesting way to develop new applications, is to obviously look at what we've done in the past and learn from it.
What is and you mentioned the speed of pick. I mean, what is the speed of the conveyor? I mean, I'll ask you, in fact, this, Victor, the speed of the conveyor and the picks per minute.
Absolutely.
What are you getting up to?
The conveyor belts typically run at around 0.5 meters per second. And the pick speed is dependent on a few factors. The main one is the belt width. You know, the wider the belt, the longer the path plan. In simulations, I think we had gotten around sort of 40 to 50 picks.
That's correct.
But in application in the field, we've actually seen it go sometimes up to 64 picks per minute. It also obviously depends on the number of contaminants on the belt.
So I'm visualising, and again for the people that are listening to this, you tip up a load of rubbish onto a conveyor somehow, and then the system will identify the what needs to be recycled and pick it up off the conveyor. But there must be situations where you have rubbish on top of other rubbish and something, you know, how do you legislate for that? How does the vision system detect what's right underneath maybe?
So we do need to design not only the robot well, but the whole sort of robot environment. So of course, if you do have a meter of material stacked up, that the robot is only going to be able to pick the top layer. A neat little trick we have done in old facilities that do have very high burden depth is simply increase the belt speed. So say they're running at 0.3, we can easily double that to 0.6 meters per second, and that alone doubles the spread of the material.
Could you almost shake as well? So it's almost like...
You do. So some of there are a lot of pre-processing steps that shake the material, that remove bulky items. And today, a lot of our units are used for quality control applications. So the waste is already at, say, 90% purity, and we're moving it from that 90% purity to that 99% purity that's required to sell it as a new raw material.
It's a really exciting automation step, but there are obviously quite a few people doing this labour-intensive task at the moment. Oliver, you must face this challenge a lot and this question a lot. Has this therefore taken jobs out of the market? And if so, are they replaced? I mean, how does that all work?
I mean, typically, most companies will be experiencing some difficulties in finding a labour force to fit their requirement. Yeah, that's not only in waste management, but in food factories, in car factories, across the board. People don't necessarily want to be doing some of the jobs that traditionally have been available at the lower ends of the pay scale. It's unfortunate that's the way it is, but that is the way it is. What we see is that those companies that are investing in automation are typically redeploying their current workforce and re-educating and upskilling them to work with the automation such that they can then focus on the next steps of automation within their business. It's quite rare that actually a workforce is lost. It's actually more a case that actually you need more people and of a higher skill level to actually run that automation in the future.
Now, the real clever bit for me is the artificial intelligence area of this. Could you maybe explain, Victor, how that works? You know, and how much of a part of this whole system and solution that is.
Yeah, I mean, that's really our core area of expertise. It's our team. If we look at our team of 30 people, I'd say a good half of them are software engineers and machine learning engineers to specifically do R&D and improve that pipeline. There are a few key elements behind it. One is we've worked very closely with NVIDIA to make sure that our code was highly optimized and could work very well with the hardware that we're using to maximize the number of frame rates we can achieve while still having very large models that can do quite complex detections. Another area is building up a huge data acquisition pipeline, because if you look at waste, there's a huge amount.
Can you give us an example of this? Because this is really interesting. So the connection between the vision and the artificial intelligence and how it grows the longer you use the system.
Yeah, so it does learn in the sense that we have, the system knows when it's unsure about an item, and that gets flagged in what's called an active learning pipeline. And so say we've never shown it a coffee cup, and it sees a coffee cup, it's going to go, okay, I see an item there, but I'm not quite sure what it is. Then that gets flagged, and we can then add, say, coffee cups to the database. Today, a lot of, I think, firms boast on having the best AI because of the biggest data set. I don't think that quite works in waste because you have so many different kinds of waste. So say, let's say milk bottles. In the UK, they're typically HDP natural. In France, they're typically into more circular HDP white items. And in Italy, they're all Tetra Pak. And that means that for all of those markets, we essentially need a slightly different data set to fine-tune the latter layers of the models. And so we've put in a lot of resources in developing an automated data acquisition pipeline, which meant that our first deployment in France 2 years ago took us 6 months to get plenty of data. Then we did one more recently in Italy that took us sort of a week, and we recently did a vision deployment in the United States, and that took us pretty much a day to acquire enough data to reach the performance levels required by the client.
Wow, really so interesting. Oliver, from you before we wrap this up, I want to know where automation is going and how important it is and how much automation is now, the robotics side here at FANUC UK. These kind of projects, they must be coming through the door all the time.
Yeah, and we're really glad to have them. I mean, any time we get the opportunity to work with a company in the early stages of their product development, we jump on it. It's important that they have the backing of a big partner sometimes. Not always, but most of the time it's useful for them to have kind of engineering and technical resource and marketing resource when they want to actually deploy into the market space. But what it gives us is the ability to actually put in place the best possible technology for the application they're looking at. Yeah, we have a huge range of robots, a huge range of tools that work alongside robots. And it just gives us that ability to actually put the right product in the right place. Typically end up with a product that is much better than if they'd have just approached it with their own resource.
And I mean, the market consumption's an interesting one for me as well, because developing a product is one thing, but obviously there needs to be a demand for it. How big is the demand for this product? How many recycling centres are there? How many could you envisage having in each recycling centre? What's the opportunity here for both companies? Because obviously this is a partnership in some senses, Victor.
It's enormous. People often forget how big the waste industry is because it's quite a hidden industry. But by some estimates, 1 out of 3 trucks on the road contains some form of waste. Just household waste has hundreds of facilities in the UK. Each one of those could have at least 20 of our units. But even beyond household waste only represents around 8% of total waste. You have construction demolition waste, you have metal sorting, you have industrial waste, you have fabric waste now being collected separately, electronic waste. So it's really just the beginning of the story. We happen to start there, and as a company, we do need to keep some level of focus in the initial stages. But long term, there's almost this uncapped potential to grow in this industry that's still also very young because a lot of stuff still isn't recycled. So I mentioned a number of facilities, many are yet to be built as well.
Yeah, I would add to that when you look across the UK, especially, you do at the moment have fairly well centralised sortation facilities. When you start adding to what Victor has sort of said there, the local sortation that offers huge possibilities, airports, shopping centres, to be able to sort locally at those locations, again, it opens up a huge new market for robotics. Yeah? You can imagine in the basement of every shopping centre, there's a huge trash can, at the moment, and recycling space. Yeah, you could have robots in there that actually sort at source those materials for the future.
And do you genuinely see that that's a good possibility?
Absolutely, yeah. No reason why not.
Yeah. So, Victor, for you as a company, your planning, your strategy, your long-term business aims, where are you going to be in 5 years?
Hopefully being the key player in the industry, enabling fully automated sorting of waste. as well as also supporting the more sort of strategic decision making through all the data that our units are generating in terms of compositional data, waste throughputs, etc.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for joining us, both of you, here at FANUC UK. I must just remind the listeners that, of course, you can actually see the Recycleye. In fact, Victor, what is your website? Do you want to just tell people?
It's simply recycleye.com.
Recycleye.com, so you'll be able to see the systems in action. Equally, you can do that on MTDCNC.com. I'm sure you'll be very, very successful. Really love being involved in these podcasts to learn about how technology is moving and how quickly it's moving, and what companies like yourselves, Ollie, FANUC, and of course Recycleye can deliver to industry. So thank you very much for your time, gentlemen.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you for having us, Paul.
Thanks for listening to the MTD podcast. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Find more episodes on mtdcnc.com.